Today, we're going to crack open some of the most powerful problem-solving strategies ever created. And here's the kicker. They don't come from some modern business guru or a fancy tech startup. Nope. They're hidden in plain sight inside ancient stories, just waiting for us to actually listen.
I mean, really, think about it. You know that feeling when you just hit a wall? Maybe it's a project at work that's just going nowhere, or a personal problem you can't seem to wrap your head around. You've tried everything you can think of, you've gone through all the logical steps, and you're right back at square one. It's a feeling we all know.
Okay, so here's the thing. The big breakthrough almost never comes from just pushing harder on the same old approach. It comes from a shift, a change in perspective. And what's so cool is that ancient folklore is just packed with these incredible frameworks for thinking differently. We're going to dive into two of the absolute best. So, our first tool comes from this amazing story about four men on a journey who find themselves in a really tight spot. They get accused of being thieves, and their only way out is to explain how they know every single tiny detail about a camel they swear they have never, ever seen.
So just try to picture this. You have a merchant who's totally frantic because he's lost his camel. He bumps into these four travelers, and somehow they start describing his missing animal perfectly. I mean, right down to its specific injuries. But when he asks, okay, where did you see it? They're like, oh, we haven't seen it. The merchant is absolutely furious, convinced they're lying thieves. Seems like an open and shut case, right?
Well, here's the secret sauce. The men's trick wasn't magic or anything like that. It was a level of observation that, let's be honest, most of us just tune out every single day. They weren't just kind of glancing at the road ahead of them, they were actively reading it, almost like it was a book, noticing these tiny little details that, when you put them all together, told a complete story. Their entire defense, their whole case, rested on just four simple clues they found on the path. Each one, by itself, seems pretty insignificant. You'd probably walk right past it. But when you piece them together, wow, they create this astonishingly clear picture of the missing animal. So let's break down exactly how they pulled this off.
All right, first up, the tracks. One of the men, Ramdat, he noticed the pattern in the dust just wasn't right. 3 of the footprints were sharp and deep, but the 4th, it was just a faint drag mark. From that one simple visual detail, he realized the camel couldn't put its full weight on that leg. It had to be lame. Simple, elegant, and totally brilliant.
Okay, the next layer of this is even more clever. Another traveler, Shivdat, he saw that the leaves and bushes on the left side of the path were all chewed up, but the stuff on the right side was completely untouched. Now, a normal, healthy camel would graze on both sides, right? So what's the only logical reason for this? Boom, the animal couldn't see out of its right eye.
Now this next clue is even more subtle. It's fantastic. Harddat spotted these tiny, almost microscopic specks of blood on the ground, and his insight here was just incredible. He thought, okay, a healthy camel uses its long tail to swat away biting insects. These little blood droplets meant an animal was getting bitten, and it couldn't defend itself. Therefore, its tail must be way too short.
And the final piece of the puzzle came from the depth of the prints themselves. The last guy, Debdat, noticed the front footprints were pressed deep into the ground, but the back ones were really faint. This imbalance told him the camel was trying to keep pressure off its rear, a pretty sure sign of a stomachache. They literally diagnosed its internal health just by looking at the dirt. Incredible! Okay, so let's shift gears now to our second tool. We're moving from that kind of deep observation to what you might call strategic wit. This story is all about Tenali Rama, a legendary courtier who was famous for his cleverness. And he has to solve a problem that isn't physical, but emotional, a big royal standoff.
You know, on the surface, the problem sounds almost childish, doesn't it? The king read a poem, and from what I gather, it wasn't a very good poem, and his queen, who was probably exhausted, yawned. That's it. But the king's pride was so wounded he saw it as this massive insult, and now the entire palace is walking on eggshells.
Now, Tenali Rama is smart. He knows he can't just walk up to the king and say, "Hey, Your Majesty, you're kind of overreacting here." That would be a complete disaster. A direct confrontation would just make the king dig his heels in even more. He needed a different strategy, one that would let the king realize his own mistake without losing face. So let's break down what's really going on. This isn't about a yawn. Not really. It's about the king's wounded ego. It's about the queen feeling awful over a misunderstanding. And it all started with a bad poem. The issue isn't the action itself, but the story the king has attached to it.
And this is where the genius comes in. Instead of tackling the problem head-on, Tenali Rama creates this completely new, parallel story. He just bursts into the royal court talking about a farmer, some special seeds, and a yawn that's about to ruin the entire harvest. It's a totally absurd scenario.
This is the moment. He presents this ridiculous idea to the court with a completely straight face. He's connecting a simple and voluntary thing like a yawn to a catastrophic outcome like a failed harvest. And the sheer absurdity of it all just makes the entire court erupt in laughter.
And that, right there, was the entire point. As the king is laughing along with everyone else, he has this little flash of insight. He sees the parallel. He realizes, oh no, I've become that foolish farmer, making this illogical leap between a yawn and disrespect. Tenali Rama didn't have to attack the king's pride. He just held up a funny mirror to his behavior. So here we have two very different stories, right? Two very different problems and two totally different kinds of solutions. But what happens when we put them together? Well, we get a surprisingly complete toolkit for thinking our way out of pretty much any corner.
So on one side, we have wisdom, which is what the four men represent. Their main tool is deep observation combined with logical deduction. It's the art of seeing what is really there. And on the other side, we have wit, embodied by Tenali Rama. His tool is reframing the problem using an analogy. It's the art of telling a better story.
And this is how they work together so perfectly. The four men were masters of discovery, of finding the objective truth just by looking closer than anyone else. Tenali Rama, on the other hand, was a master of delivery, of communicating a subjective truth by creating a brand new narrative. You really need both. You need the ability to find the facts, and you need the ability to make those facts matter to people.
So why are we talking about lost camels and royal arguments? Because these are not just cute little folktales. They are blueprints for thinking that can help us solve our own impossible problems, whether that's in a boardroom, a science lab, or just in our own living rooms.
When you boil it all down, you're left with two really powerful mental models that you can apply, like right now. First, are you truly observing the situation? Not just looking at it, but really seeing the tiny, overlooked details that might hold the answer. And second, if the facts are clear but you're still stuck, can you reframe the whole issue? Can you tell a different story about the problem that changes its entire meaning?
Think of the four men in Tenali Rama as two different hats we can wear. Sometimes you need to put on your detective hat, right? You're patiently gathering the data that everyone else just missed. And then other times you need to be the storyteller, the diplomat, finding that perfect analogy that breaks the stalemate and lets everyone move forward. So I'll leave you with this thought. The next time you hit that wall, when you feel totally and completely out of options, which tool are you going to reach for? Are you going to practice the wisdom of deep observation and look for the clues that are hidden in plain sight? Or are you going to practice the wit of reframing and invent a new story that changes everything?